Today I'm talking about one of my favorite guys, car guys. We all know them. We've smiled and nodded while they've described the car maintenance they performed over the weekend, feigned an "oh cool" while talking about the new parts they ordered, and removed them from our social media feeds to get a break from all the pictures of their baby. Car guys are certainly enthusiastic. But it wasn't until I stumbled onto an article by Dan Neal, an automotive columnist, about the relationship between men and cars that I realized just how bizarre the interest can be. As someone who could care less about cars, I was finding it hysterical reading things like,
"If you have testes jangling in your jeans, you understand that guys love cars. It's the one machine that defines our tribe."
Well, I certainly never got the tribal memo on that one. Other things I found downright idiotic, like,
"Cars allow men to switch off their inferior, and often inconvenient, right cerebral hemispheres to silence the inner Oprah."
Ah yes, that damn inconvenient right hemisphere, always helping with spatial awareness and creativity. So inferior, and always sounding like Oprah. And some things made me genuinely worry for the man.
The solo car trip is one of the few activities that lets men be alone, without having their solitude pathologized. Try telling your friends and family that you'll be spending a few days at the beach alone, or going off sailing by yourself. The reaction is likely to be disbelief or worry.
I ask for alone time pretty regularly. I mean, it clearly says something about Dan if his friends and family are scared he's planning to kill himself whenever he's alone. But then I read one line which changed everything for me. "Our cars understand us." Suddenly it all clicked. I know this behavior. I've seen this before. I did a whole video on it. Horse girls. Car guys are the male equivalent of horse girls. I managed to take an empathetic approach at understanding horse girls, so shouldn't I give car guys the same benefit? Well, let's find out. As much as I laughed it off initially, Dan was right about one thing. Men crave the appeal of asserting masculinity through technology, a statement he gathered from a study from the University of Minnesota. As pointless as it seems to gender gatekeep inanimate objects, it's done constantly, and it's not always done as a marketing gimmick, which we'll discuss later, but it's a practice firmly rooted in most cultures. We can trace the car's masculinization to the separate spheres ideology. Separate spheres was first mentioned in Aristotle's Politics, where he outlines two different world spheres of the private and the public. It was women who belonged in the private domestic sphere, and men who ventured out into the public sphere, contributing to the community. To this day, this ideology is still adhered to by many, and in the 19th century, you can bet it was the norm. So when the automobile first came onto the scene, it being a way to get around in public life, defaulted to being a male product. Upon their invention, gasoline vehicles were seen as loud, smelly, fast, dirty, powerful, all things that were not associated with femininity. What was associated with femininity, though, was electric cars, which were clean, quiet, and simpler to use than their boorish alternative. This is actually why there are people today who think driving stick makes them more of a man, because simpler is feminine. So in the late 19th century, it's already cemented that gasoline cars and the traits associated with them are masculine, and electric cars are for women. Jump over 100 years into the future, and really beliefs aren't very different. Just take it from Dan, who thinks electric cars are emasculating, because they are missing
fire, thunder, chrome hearts, and iron blocks, men stuff.
If loud, smelly, and dirty have been entrenched in our culture as manly for over a century, then that's what some men learn to lean into. It may be a superficial way of building up your self-image, but our culture accepts that as totally valid. Being into cars is a normalized, modern way of showing off how manly you are. Now, I'm sure any car guy listening right now will just be saying that it's not about that for them, they just enjoy the hobby. And I get that too. I really like upgrading my PC. I take pride in the machine. But it's also a private hobby. It's not something most people will ever know about or see. It's very hard to see our own psychology. One, because our brains are tremendous at protecting our egos, and two, because it happens without active decisions from us, uncautiously, from deep desires formed in our evolution, like our mating rituals. There is no logic in removing a muffler, wanting to be as loud as possible in a public space. It is just a way to say, look at me, and take up as much space as possible, because that shows power. And although I don't like how the idea of manspreading was used for such ridiculous arguments, I imagine this is originally what the sentiment was supposed to bring attention to. The need for men to take up space, whether that's literal, in buying the biggest truck you can, or metaphorical, as in creating the most noise. For some guys, cars need to be bigger, louder, dirtier, anything to get attention and signal their manliness. It is simply peacocking. This includes wanting the most powerful engine under your hood, because even if they'll never have a use for it, their confidence increases knowing they're packing something big. Although some of us see the compensation for what it is and find peacocking annoying, it's a very human thing to do. I'm sure I do it too, but just in a different way. Men peacock, and women notice. It's a mating ritual that transcends species. To show that women buy into this as well, look at the survey examining the top 2 vehicles women associate with attractive men. Pickup trucks and sports cars, no surprise there. One conveys a rugged manliness and the other wealth and status. But who is imprinting women with these signals, associating a truck with manliness? Well, no discussion about anything in our dystopian consumer society would be complete without mentioning how someone is making money off this by manipulating our psychology. There is a whole marketing science behind cars, specifically aimed at appealing to the American male. Ads spew that image of a working man, stoic, hands dirty, wearing jeans, able to haul ass with his powerful truck. And that's really what they're trying to sell, the male fantasy, which you can have if you buy the truck. In this Marketing Schools article, they break down the psychological responses companies expect from men who see their commercials. See that Toyota towing 10,000 pounds? That could be you being that powerful. The truck's just an additional muscle to be flexed. And we are so bombarded with ads from birth to death that it's hard to say at what point do the commercials stop reflecting culture and instead start dictating it. For every man who sees the commercial, a woman does too, who sees this handsome, hardworking, powerful man who, as she's seen countless times, owns a truck. Whatever. At the end of the day though, it seems pretty clear that car guys are just partaking in peacocking, a part of the mating ritual. But that still doesn't explain the more extreme car guys, the ones who take it much farther. It doesn't explain why Dan has an understanding relationship with his car, like horse girls do with their horses. So why does it get so weird? A study entitled On Men and Cars by Dag Bachmar, I believe, comes the closest to touching on what's going on here. Bachmar brings in this theory of gender as a doing. Doing gender is a term coined in 1987, which basically describes gender as a performance of repeated behaviors. You are doing your gender. And if we adopt this perspective, car guys, even extreme ones, make complete sense. Our gender needs to be emphasized to others through interactions, and done so repeatedly, and a car can be a very easy way to signal masculinity, especially repeatedly. More so, cars can be modified to further accentuate their masculine features and thereby in turn our own. You can upgrade your rims to be flashy, really get people to stop and stare. You can remove your diesel engine's particulate filter to roll coal and assert your dominance over the Prius owners. You can slap on a pair of truck nuts to really hit someone over the head with how much of a masculine guy you are. Hopefully you're thinking, yeah, that's pretty extreme. That level of doing gender is overboard. What would cause someone to go that far? Well, I think I found an answer in a study from 2015. The study documented how men react when they feel their masculinity is threatened. And man, they react in some very strange ways. When given false results on a hand grip strength test, showing them to be physically weak, men proceeded to lie about their height, claiming to be nearly an inch taller, lie about the number of past sexual partners they've had, and amped up their aggression, all just to not be perceived as weak. The study also found that threatened men will typically adopt 2 strategies to protect their masculinity. They will 1. Increase their avoidance of products viewed as feminine, and 2. Gravitate more towards products viewed as masculine. With this knowledge, we can then theorize that extreme car guys are just car guys with threatened masculinity. They take the stereotypical masculine features of the gasoline mangens to the extreme. So using this theory, rolling coal can be explained as an attempt to double down on the dirtiness feature of masculinity and distance oneself from the cleanliness associated with femininity. This also explains the total lack of respect for the environment. Caring about the environment is, I must assume, a form of cleaning in their eyes, and therefore women's work. And this is why cars understand them. It is such an extension of their identity, a needed proof of their manhood that it feels a part of them. Because without it, They would feel vulnerable and less confident in themselves. And I actually don't find this weird. I can have compassion for them. I understand. Look, all people have the desire to feel confident in their gender. It's important to our mental health. It's just some of us need more of a boost. But this compassion, understanding, it only goes so far. Because at best, car guys are just exploring a way to solidify their gender. There's nothing wrong with that. But at worst, they're a very self-conscious individual who can actually harm others. One of the biggest masculine properties of cars, which I haven't mentioned yet, is risk. It has been shown again and again in studies that risk is an alluring factor for car guys. It is the desire to go fast and play with a little bit of danger. Men in the 19th century wanted nothing to do with electric cars because they couldn't go fast, and nothing's changed. This is why cars are given names like Jaguar, Mustang, Viper, wild untamable animals, hinting at the aggression, speed, and autonomy that could be yours. The most aggressive and risky drivers are young men, and make no mistake, it is definitely tied to their masculinity. A study performed in 2007 found that when young men were primed with masculine words coming from their car radio, their driving speeds increased significantly. Young men needing to feel like big men, playing fast and loose with not only their lives but other people's, is a real problem. Last year, I suffered a front-end collision that easily could have killed me, because the other driver was speeding and didn't respect a stop sign. People die daily, all the time, from cars. In America, your likelihood of dying from a car crash is 1 in 106. That's a little under 1%. For some perspective, your risk of dying from gun violence is 0.3%. And yet I constantly hear debate about gun safety and never changing our transportation system or having stricter requirements to obtain a driver's license. I feel that even if people did stop and think about this, their driving habits wouldn't change. It is the riskiness, the chance of death that car guys enjoy. Even if that's at the expense of an innocent person's life, they just don't think about that. If I ever needed something to convince me of toxic masculinity, even though I think that's a pretty toxic term itself, it's this. This is a fundamental flaw of our culture's definition of masculinity. Cars are not toys. They are tons of metal hurling around feet from us. And we are entrusting them to 16-year-olds, not to mention 98-year-olds. We allow almost anyone to get a driver's license, and we don't retest them, despite cars being one of the leading causes of death. And this is all because of America's obsession with autonomy, being the cowboy, our cultural masculinity. So are car guys like horse girls? Well, horse girls mind their own business and look to animals for emotional support. Some car guys do the same thing. They mind their own business and use an object for emotional support. But the extreme car guys, the ones prone to road rage, speeding, reckless driving, well, they're inconsiderate and a danger to their community. There is no need to annoy someone with engine noise, let alone put their life at risk just to protect your ego. So are car guys like horse girls? No. Absolutely fucking not. Just as a fun note, I have had countless takes ruined just because of somebody's loud engine. Men peacock and women notice. Oh, come on. Prone to road rage. God damn it. Other things I found downright what the fuck? Now you might be thinking, yeah, now I got the fucking train going?